Greetings and welcome everyone to this unique interview with one Drew, a representative of Telo Trucks. It's fantastic to have you here. How you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me on. I'm a big fan of your channel and I'm honored to finally be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're gonna go ahead and like jump right in here. I'm like a no fluff kind of fella if I can be. This is you speaking as a representative for Telo Trucks. So if you have sidebars that you want to go down, I am more than happy to, go down those. I may have extra questions, things like that. Just throwing that out there. But yeah,
Sure.
according to Jason, the Telo Truck was revealed after the culmination of like 3 years of work. What was it like getting to share that work with the Telo Trucks community?
It was super satisfying just a month ago now. It feels like so much has happened last March where we did the in-person event. Though I should apologize as the social media guy for the live stream not being great. It definitely was kind of a last minute thing. We had a lot of pressure from the community because not everybody could be there, of course. So a lot of people were like, stream it, stream it, stream it. So the Tello team was kind of like, I don't think we should stream it. It's mostly going to be a good event for people who are there in person to come sit in it, look at it, touch it, get a feel for the dimensions. So I tried my best, but we didn't have a lot of rehearsals. So I just want to apologize to everybody for the audio and the video not being fantastic. But I will say for the people who were there, um, everybody was so positive about it. Everybody was so impressed with the build, fit and finish of everything, making it feel so much like a production vehicle. And it's definitely surreal to see something that's been in render format for so long. You know, when Tello first brought me on and hired me, we still really did not have a driving aesthetic prototype.
Hmm.
And making content is so much harder when the product doesn't really exist in the real world yet, and you're kind of
Right.
selling an idea. So my job became much, much easier and way more fun once that truck had finally been assembled and shown off to the world. But yeah, there were many iterations that went on behind the scenes, a lot of stuff that people didn't see. And that, as a YouTuber, is very difficult because you want to talk about everything. You want to dive into the nitty-gritty details. And there was so much that they were like, nope, we're not ready yet. Nope, we can't share that yet. So it was certainly surreal to finally get people's first impressions. You know, I've been to many automotive events and many unveilings or prototype reveals before and asked people's impressions. And I've certainly seen people have mixed opinions on vehicles because I'm very attracted to radical outside the box thinking. And I will say that of all the events I've been to, I've never been to one that was more positive. And that sounds like I'm biased because I'm from Tello, but genuinely, like, we invited criticism. We were straight up asking people who were sitting in the truck and checking out the truck, like, what is there anything you don't like? What would you like to see changed? What would you like to see improved? And there was hardly anything people were bringing up. Everything was just like, no, I just want it. Just make it real. I'll take one now. Very little feedback that was critical. And I've never been to an event that was that positive before. So I knew that we had something special here because everybody in that room was pumped to see it and thought it was more spacious inside than they expected, which we love hearing because it's such a small truck. And it just made them feel like every other vehicle on the road is way too big.
Yeah, so I think that was very interesting that you mentioned that there is basically no negative feedback. It's one of those things that as somebody who studied engineering myself, is like I've never sat down and built a circuit board or put together a concept and there and my teacher was like, "Oh, that is right on 100%. First time through, it's almost always
Right.
all right. All of this sucks,
Yes.
redo it." And it's great to hear that that was the case for you guys.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
see.
I was ecstatic. I felt like, man, everybody, like, I'm waiting for something to come up. I mean, the closest thing, to be fair, was a lot of people surprisingly asking about the glass roof. They were
Hmm.
like, "Can we get one that's not glass?" I was like, "Well, yeah. I mean, you can. That's the easy part. You could swap that out, or you can put a. People in Tesla's already put those little interior covers over the glass, which can reduce the cabin heat and that kind of thing. And we've talked about doing solar roof and all that. So I
Hmm.
was like, yeah, that's the easy stuff. I meant more like the comfort levels and the positioning of things. But everyone was, we had a guy that was 6'8"
Hmm.
that sit in the front, and he was comfortable, and he said, "Yeah, I'm ordering one." He put in a deposit.
That's what's up. Okay, so how close is the Telo truck you guys showed off at that event to what you can expect the customer to receive? Like, is it like 90%? Like, how close?
Yeah, the thing is similar to what you've probably heard from other startups, like
Mhm.
that there's always going to be iteration, I think. Even when we're in production, there's still going to
Mhm.
be room to make changes because I'm sure after we deliver the first few hundred, we could find something that needs to be fixed or needs to be improved or could be better, and then we tweak it after those first few hundred. So I would never say that there's ever in really any vehicle design, especially when you're an electric startup, is like locked in, it's done, we're not changing anything. But yeah, I would say aesthetically speaking, it's quite close. I don't think there's going to be that many changes unless we really run into some kind of major like groundbreaking, like, oh, we could really tweak this or we could really save a lot by changing this. But they kind of designed it from the beginning in mind of what suppliers can do and what are capable of and what the material costs are. So the little tweaks with the interior, they might make the door cards a little bit thinner to increase arm and shoulder room. They
Mhm.
might tweak the center console a bit just to extend that total bed length to make sure 4x8 sheets, can fit in there and everything.
Right.
So it was kind of what the truck was built around. But I would say, like, yeah, that vehicle was certainly built with, prototype parts, as in the high volume manufacturing wouldn't use the same processes to make those parts, but dimensionally and aesthetically speaking, I would say it's very accurate. It's very close to what the end consumer will get.
Gotcha. Let's see. So, what is the coolest feature that no one really asks about or that you get the opportunity to talk about that you just like have to share about? You have to gush about it right now.
Ugh, I love that question because I can pick so many and I have a hard time just deciding on one because a lot of people just look at it and go, huh. And I'm like, ask away. Probably the biggest one that I feel like I have to keep bringing up because no one notices it is the pedestal seats.
Hmm.
Just having that singular pillar in the middle. There's a lot of really clever engineering by Graham that went into that, one of our top engineers. And it seriously opens up legroom way more than people I think realize. Like when you just get in the truck, you don't really notice it because the seats are just at a normal, pretty upright position, and you just think,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, those are the front seats." But when you sit in the back, that's often at the event when we had hundreds of people getting in and out of it. That's usually what I highlighted because it got the most amount of wow factor. Every
Hmm.
time I was like, stick your feet right under the seat. Notice how it's like basically floating. And they were like, "Oh, what? Wait a second." Like we're so trained when we sit in the second row of cars to like leave room for those seat rails. And we're so used to having to kind of tuck our feet in between those rails and it kind of makes you feel a little crammed. But this is just so much more open and so much more comfortable for such a small cabin. Um, there's so much clever engineering to make sure that the seat is still adjustable. It can move back, it can move forward, but still have that open design, which even helps for getting in the front. You can tuck your foot in a little bit more than you would in a normal vehicle.
Mhm.
So you kind of change the way you get in and out of the truck, but once you get the hang of it, it's like, oh wow, this is surprisingly natural and comfortably we fit, 4 or 5 people in there. So that feature alone doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, and I'm still perplexed and trying to figure out why more automakers don't do it. I think it's a great idea to boost legroom.
Fair enough. So it's funny when you mentioned the seat, I'm like, that was the last thing I thought you were gonna mention. Like I thought, oh, the
There's a lot of
coolest
obvious
feature.
ones, right?
Right.
Like Midgate is pretty big. I feel like not enough people talk about that, or I just don't think that feature is included in enough pickup trucks.
Hmm.
I think there's only like one electric truck on the market right now that has it, and it's a massive one. So they're all massive, but like you can do that in pretty much all cars, right? You're like a sedan, an SUV, you can fold down the second row to extend the bed.
Right.
Suddenly, when we're making a big pickup truck, they're like, "Oh, we can't do that. Get rid of that feature."
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's amazing. Like when I asked that question, originally I was framing it like, oh, we are gonna get a blurb that we haven't heard about before or something like that. And that was the chair was the perfect answer because it was so far out of the realm of what I was expecting. So yeah, I
Good.
appreciate that.
Good. There's a lot. That's why it was a hard question to pick. The dimensions is the obvious one because that's kind of what we've built it for. But the other perplexing one that you really don't even understand until you drive it. So I hope everybody gets a chance to at least ride in it at some point in the next year. We're planning all kinds of events and stuff. But showing up to places or when you're in a tight turn and you don't think you're going to make it, and then it turns out you were like 3 feet away from the obstacle is amazing because we've just trained ourselves to have these 3 foot bed, 3 foot hoods in front of us,
Hmm.
or more. And once you get in a vehicle that doesn't have that, you just feel so much more agile. It's so much easier to park and navigate. And it's really surreal because I've driven it a couple of times and I'm worried I'm going to hit something. I'm pulling in and they're like, keep going. You can fit. You can fit. I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want to break something." They're like, no, come out, look. And there's like 2 feet in front of the car. I'm like, not even close.
Yep, yep, yep. I drive a little a Polaris, like the little square boxy truck things for
Yeah.
my job, and I noticed that the Tello has a very similar slope to that. So I'm going to be in a unique position to be able to understand how awesome that is. But I do notice that the hoods and stuff get in the way all the time, and so
Oh,
Tello,
yeah.
just for that fact alone, I was willing to say, you know what, my ideal garage is going to have an Aptera and a Tello just side by side, and that's
Same,
all.
same. That's mine. That sounds amazing. Good choice.
Yeah, man. Let's see. How does one go about changing the way we look at trucks? Specifically, like what was the genesis of the idea for Tello?
That's a great question. And I know it because I've heard it so many times from the co-founders. So I'm kind of repeating what they've explained to me. So I wasn't there at the genesis, but I do know they had a first principles design approach of like, okay, forget every other truck you've ever seen in your life. We're throwing out the playbook of here's what trucks look like because we're moving towards a more electric age. You don't need a big combustion engine anymore. So I know they really started with the front because they knew as far as payload capacity, people want a decent sized bed. We have a 5 foot bed
Hmm.
without the mid gate. So you can't really cheat on that, right? Like if you need a 5 foot bed, it's got to be 5 feet. So there's not much redesign you can do to a 5 foot bed. So they started with the front. How do we have a unobtrusive, reliable crumple zone? Because that was Jason Marks, our CEO's background was in safety testing. So he's analyzed all kinds of different iterations of the truck in different kinds of crash tests,
Hmm.
front impact, side impact, and he worked on the first electric trucks that came out on the market. So he knows exactly what needs to crumple, how it needs to crumple. So that's why it's honestly quite frustrating sometimes when people look at the truck and in 2 seconds are like, well, it must be dangerous. It must be a death trap because it's so small. And it's like, that's a shame because that's really where the whole design genesis began
Hmm.
was safety. What's the necessary crumple zone to pass FMVSS 208? How do we make it bigger than that so it's even bigger than required,
Hmm.
and then start from there with the wheel positioning so that you can maximize legroom. And then it was a big study on cabin design. How can we comfortably fit 5 occupants in the smallest amount of space possible?
Hmm.
So that was in the early days, like when I first walked into the much smaller Tello office. Thankfully, they've moved out of that one. That was one of their first like big research projects. Was they had this like wooden buck of an interior. You can see it, my old video, I think, that's showcasing like how they can position the seats and how they can make everybody feel like they have adequate headroom, even taller guys, even people with big legs, and what's the sitting position look like, and how do you make it comfortable because you can't really cheat on that bed. The bed's got to be 5 feet, so there's no negotiation there. But there was a lot of negotiation for storage capability underneath the bed and the safety system because we knew in the age of electric, you can fit battery pack and motors in a really tight space now in a pretty flat chassis. You
Hmm.
don't have this big iron block in front of you. You don't have these big engine with all these pistons. So it really started with the front, work your way back, and just every inch, side to side, head to toe, how do we maximize the most amount of space? And that came to the battery pack design as well, so that you could keep the truck relatively short, which also
Mm.
doesn't get talked about too much. 10 inches of ground clearance, but also not that tall. Displaces less air, better aerodynamics, better efficiency, more range out of a small pack. So yeah, there's kind of this amazing positive feedback loop that starts forming when it's like, oh, if we take more weight out here or more space out here, we don't need as many cells to go as far as we want to go. That's why Telo's aiming for 350-mile range with a 106 kilowatt hour pack, and you'll notice no other electric truck is even close to that. Like they all have much, much bigger battery packs to go not as far.
Right.
So making a off-road capable, still good ground clearance. They still want it to be a truck that you can drive around off pavement, but still get really great efficiency, pretty close to that to what you would see on like a performance Model Y. But it's also now a pickup truck. That's not easy to do, and I think they pretty much cracked the code. That's the best way to do it, I think.
So if there was, this is more of like an esoteric, like abstract question, so there's no right answer here, just throwing that out
Oh,
there.
good.
But
I like to say there's no wrong answer.
so there's no wrong yet. There we go. All right.
Yeah.
So if there was one thing that you could tell yourself about where you are now, like what would that thing be?
Ooh, wow. That is a tough question. Um, would have said like my younger self, you mean? Or
Correct.
okay.
Like if you were telling your younger self, okay, in 10 years, I'm gonna be like the biggest EV guy on the planet. What would you say to yourself?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I would probably have told myself to invest more in
Hmm?
certain stocks. That's the giveaway. But no, I would also say not to worry so much. Like things are going to work out. They might not go according to your plan, or they might not work as to your timeline. But just relax, be calm, enjoy life because you've got one, and things are going to be okay. So just focus on the good things in life. Don't stress, don't worry so much because it's kind of a I like to say this isn't a Tello slogan, but kind of a Drew slogan is more of like a regret is a choice. No
Hmm.
matter what you do in life, you can choose to regret it, or you could choose to say, no, I made mistakes and I learned from those mistakes, and that's going to impact how I live the rest of my life. So don't worry so much.
Hmm. Phenomenal. Okay, so you literally just changed my life just then. Regret choice. Let's go. All right.
I like hearing that.
Oh man. All right. So one thing that a lot of people think about when it comes to like smaller, quirkier vehicles, and we hit on this a little while earlier, was
Sure.
that safety is, kind of like a foregone conclusion. And like, what would you
hmm
say to somebody that says, "Oh, it's tiny, so it can't be safe"? Like, what's your approach to that when it comes to the Tele truck specifically?
That's a great question because we've debated with the team, like me and Jason have gone back and forth a lot about this. What is the best way to talk about safety? Because we've realized like sometimes the more you talk about it, the more concerned people get. So sometimes it's like it doesn't matter if you have all this evidence or data that supports your thesis. It's like if we unveiled the truck and said, "Okay, everyone, here's the Telo truck. Here's how safe it is. Here's how amazing the safety is. It's super safe, guys. Trust us. It's like it kind of weakens the safety argument if you just
Hmm.
lead with safety all the time. People are like, why are you jumping to that?" So we're kind of like we'll answer the questions and concerns as they come, but we don't want to like lead with it because I feel like it kind of weakens the argument if you're constantly leading into that small must be dangerous narrative. But I would argue that most people have been misinformed pretty heavily around vehicle safety, which is a huge shame because it's a very interesting topic. And the more I've learned about it, the more I've learned that the very traditional mindset of big, tall, heavy vehicle wins in the head-on collision on the highway. So therefore, it must be safer. And the more I've learned, I've actually discovered that's often not the case. A good friend of mine I was talking to recently, it was actually in a collision. It wasn't his fault, but he was in a highway collision in a smart car.
Hmm.
And the police straight up told him that part of the reason he survived and was okay was because he had so little inertia. The vehicle was so lightweight, which is like the complete opposite of the general public's perception, right? Everyone just
Right.
assumes, oh, smart car means like coffin as soon as you get hit, right? But no, there's a lot that, and safety is not like a linear spectrum either. It's not just like this is safe vehicle, this is not safe vehicle. It's not like that simple. There's so much that goes into, okay, there's certain things that can be safer for occupants, but far more dangerous for pedestrians.
Hmm.
So that conversation comes up a lot with the Tello. It's kind of the perfect height and angle to be the most minimal impact to pedestrians in a collision. Also, just the low downward visibility angle helps immensely because you see people way sooner in a Telo truck than you would in a large pickup truck.
Hmm.
So there's studies I can share out and send links to that are like, hey, for every one occupant we save by making the vehicle heavier and taller, we kill 10 pedestrians. So
Hmm.
I would argue that's not exactly a safer vehicle.
Right.
But also, even if you just want to play the game, the typical American game of, well, if it's a bigger vehicle, as long as it's safe for me, I don't care about the pedestrians. It just needs to be safer for me. Even that's been pretty well debunked in my experience of like the more weight you have, the more energy and inertia you have in a collision, which means it requires more crumple zone to slow you down. If
Hmm.
you're a 9,000 pound vehicle and you get hit going, 60 miles an hour or whatever, it takes a lot more crumple and a lot more time and energy to brace for that impact. And most of the vehicles on the road today have these giant engines in the front, which are not crumple. It's another huge misconception we fight a lot is everyone just assumes this big engine just collapses like a pillow
No.
in a head-on collision. And it's like, no, most of the safety systems in today's modern vehicles have to be designed around how do we get that big engine block out of the way? It's
Yep.
all like, how do we tuck it down or to the side or whatever so that that big engine block doesn't get pushed into the cabin, harming occupants. So there's all kinds of things like that that I've learned that I've struggled with. Like, how do we accurately and efficiently explain that to our potential customers or to our fans out there? Because we're fighting an uphill battle against safety information, where a lot
Mm.
of people just see big hoods and assume, okay, you've got a 5 foot hood, that's a 5 foot crumple zone. It's like, nope, you've got a little crumple there and a little crumple here. Yeah, once you start seeing these crash tests, especially on all electric vehicles, you'll start noticing how little of the front actually collapses, and a
Mm.
lot of that doesn't contribute to your crumple zone, and also the lighter the vehicle gets and the smaller it gets, it's not to mention for minor collisions, not major ones, smaller vehicles are far less likely to be collided with because
Hmm.
makes sense. It's a smaller target, right? So it's a
Right.
lot. People with big trucks that can't see out of them very well are more likely to hit things because they're big,
Right.
So you're going to hit everything. Or sometimes I've argued with people on the front of the teller. They're like, "Well, what if I hit it from here?" I was like, "Well, if that was a big truck, it would it would have been hit there, but because the tello is so small, it wouldn't have been hit at all." And you
Right.
can creep into intersections without taking up as much space.
Yes.
Comes up a lot with big trucks. People are creeping out into the road because they can't see because they're
Hmm.
positioned way back here in the truck. Whereas in the Tello, you can creep out, not even be in the lane, and get way better visibility that way, which prevents the collision from happening in the first place, which is, I think, what everyone would rather prioritize is no accident. Let's
Right.
focus on no accident and then
Amen.
maximize safety when an unavoidable accident happens.
Gotcha. Yeah. So even not even with all big trucks, like my little sedan, most of the roads in Colorado have this really annoying hedge. Like you'll have a hedge like right next to the sidewalk, and
Yep.
you have to like creep out, and you know that your car is 2 feet into the lane, and you have to do that
Yep.
in order to see. Yeah, I love the fact that the Tello has that flat face because like now I can just, all right, I'm not in the road. All right, we're
Right.
good. All right.
Exactly. It's so easy, and there's so many advantages to thinking that way. And it always kills me when people just have the I need the bigger, heavier vehicle to be safe. And I'm like, dude, we're sharing the road with semi trucks.
Yes.
If you're in a head-on with a semi truck, doesn't matter if you're in a Hummer EV, you're gone. You're
Yeah,
gonna lose that one every time.
exactly.
So to me, that's kind of a pointless battle. It's just just be the heaviest vehicle possible.
Man, there was this meme that I saw where they had basically a bunch of tanks driving around on the road, And then the person that is watching these tanks drive by is like, maybe I need a what are those things? There's a military vehicle that's bigger and heavier than a tank, and they're like, yeah, maybe we need one of those things. And so it's just, yeah, there's no end to trying to be the bigger, heavier vehicle. It's better to design for keeping everybody involved safe instead of just, simplifying it to bigger equals better.
Right, absolutely. So there's a lot of work on the education to be done for sure, and there's also just infinite positive feedback loop of the smaller you get, the more efficient it gets, the less it costs. And there's a very negative feedback loop that we're discovering with electric trucks right now, where they make them big, which makes them
Hmm.
inefficient, so they don't go very far. So they put more batteries in them, which makes them heavier.
Yep.
So they just keep getting more and more inefficient. And as a lot of Rivian owners have showcased, like once you start paying for that DC fast charging 50, 60 cents a kilowatt hour, if you're getting 2 miles a kilowatt hour, it's not even cheaper than gas.
Right.
Like at that point, you're not saving money. And we want everybody to kind of move towards a cleaner all electric future. So to get there, we're going to need more efficient trucks. Trucks are necessary. Everybody in the world, every country needs pickup trucks for getting work done in cities and in rural communities. So trucks are unavoidable, and we're going to run out of fossil fuels at some point. Like this is where it's headed.
I was struck by Telo's design efficiency first and foremost. Like, I saw the vehicle and I was like, oh, that's a quirky little truck. I kind of like it. And then I started digging into the bones of what they decided to do with packaging and things like that. It feels like more or less every inch of the space that's in the Telo truck is used for something. So, like, are there any plans to apply that kind of use every centimeter or inch design philosophy to like a mid-size sedan or a motorcycle or something? Like, what are you guys' future plans if you don't, if you can talk about that?
Sure. It's funny you said motorcycle because I don't know if you know their backstory, but that was actually how Telos started.
Hmm.
Because the mission, which hasn't changed, the mission statement of Tello is shrink the mobility footprint.
Hmm.
That's always been the goal. And their original pitch to a lot of investors and some of their early employees was how to make a all-electric motorcycle that's affordable and has decent range and still really lightweight so that you could pick it up and move it around pretty easily. So that was the original pitch. And they quickly discovered, looking at other electric motorcycles on the market, that it's a pretty small demographic in the US at least
Hmm.
of people that are willing to buy all electric motorcycles. But the original business pitch that they were giving to investors started off with a little motorcycle and then used that money from the motorcycle to work up to a small car and
Hmm.
then use that money from the small car to work up to a mini pickup truck. And they went out and they met with hundreds of different investors and potential customers. And even the motorcycle guys, even the ones who were excited about the motorcycle, just pointed at the truck and said, I want that. Just give me the truck. Just cut to the chase. Like, we don't need to go through the motorcycle phase. There's already electric motorcycles. We don't need the little car. We just want a mini truck because trucks have gotten so massive in the US and so many people loved their old Ford Rangers and their old Tacomas that used to be much, much smaller than they are now. And they had learned that because of the EPA requiring emissions to be really, really strict on smaller vehicles, it unintentionally forced all these automakers, I don't know about forced, but it incentivized all the big automakers to just make bigger and bigger trucks,
Hmm.
which increased pedestrian deaths and made them not as efficient, obviously, once they switched to electric because they're big and heavy. So that was the original pitch, but so many people they met with kept asking for that mini truck. They decided to pivot pretty early on and say, we think there's much more demand for this. We think there's a hole in the market. There's a bunch of people that want a little but capable truck, not just small and, take out all the cool things about the truck, but also small and powerful. And that's what made them start over kind of from scratch and say, okay, let's really zero in on this because everybody keeps asking about this little truck we have on our roadmap. So yeah, I'm with you there. I keep begging them like, what's after the truck? Like, can we do a little car? I want a little sedan or something, that's super efficient. And I'm happy to say, unlike me, the engineers and the executives, the chief of staff at Tello are very focused on the pickup, and they have spent no engineering time, money, or resources on experimenting with other form factors because they're just locked in on we need the truck, we need that to exist, we need to focus on getting that to market. So they're not getting distracted. Don't worry. I'm speaking for myself, but yeah, there's been nothing more than just water cooler talk at the office about like, hey, if you converted this into a little sedan, that would be pretty efficient and pretty small. And they're like, yeah, true, but people want the mini truck. But I think the way I would describe it from my conversations with them is yes, a lot of their battery packaging, which hasn't really been done before, which is really exciting and we can't talk too much about, but a lot of their battery packaging would translate fairly well to a smaller car.
Hmm.
And it could be really efficient and have a decent amount of storage space and get great range and all that. But I think they realized, and this is probably the right call, as much as I'm a diehard sedan fan, they probably realized like there's not a hole in the market for like small, efficient sedans.
Right.
There's already pretty decent options between Model 3, Ioniq 6, and ours would probably be better, but not by as significant of a margin as the Telo truck is compared to most other pickup trucks. Like
Gotcha.
it's 4 feet shorter than a Maverick. The Maverick's like the smallest truck right now. So there's like a huge space savings, but it has like 3 times the towing capacity. It's got great payload, it's got way more horsepower. And of course, it's all electric. So there's a bunch of advantages that come with that between maintenance and fuel costs and all these advantages that come to that. So they see that as the bigger need.
Hmm.
Whereas making a smaller car is probably just going to be like, we can do that too. It's not giving a huge incentive over what's already on the market. So
Gotcha.
definitely not saying never, um, but there has been certainly a lot of requests from the community for just iterations on what we've already unveiled.
Hmm.
Always had a lot of people that is like, just do a two door, just do a two-seater, just extend the bed out, just permanently midgate down. I always thought the midgate was the best of both. I was like,
Right.
well, if you need 5 seats, put it up, but most of the time you just want an 8 foot bed, then just leave it down. But for whatever reason, some people don't want the roof to go back as far, which there's actually some aero penalties for. So
Mhm.
I could get lost in the weeds on this topic because some people are like, well, just like drop the second row of seats and make it a two-door. And I'm like, well, now the wind coming over the roof line doesn't pass over the tailgate like it does on the current Tello. That was part of the reason they sculpted the kind of rear cabin fin the way they did it because it just misses the tailgate. So it really helps aero in its current shape. If
Mhm.
you just cut the roof size in half, the aero would take a big hit, and of course you would lose the functionality. We've also discovered from talking with a lot of fleet buyers, a lot of people would assume that a fleet customers would want just a two-door, two-seater. Turns out about 70, I think it's over 70% of fleet pickup truck orders are for the full crew cabs with
Hmm.
4 doors, 5 seats. It's because, I don't know, maybe a lot of the fleet customers use their company truck as also a family vehicle. So they tend to keep buying the 4 door pickups. It's weird. You would think, but yeah, there's always a lot of comments asking for that. Um, but there's probably a way we can do it that's more aero, and there's a way we can do a flatbed in the future that takes down some of the walls because that's been a heavily requested feature. Also, a heavily requested model is a 3 row van. So
Hmm.
just like sliding doors, and then you convert the monster tunnel basically into leg room. So you can have a third row back there, still have a decent amount of storage space behind the third row, and have decent leg room for the third row passengers. So 3 row SUVs sell really well in the US. So that's also up for consideration because it wouldn't require us to change our wheelbase, our battery pack. A lot of the interior would stay the same. It's mostly just a change to the back half of the exterior body panels. So there's a lot of different models we could do on our existing platform. But yeah, I'm more like you, where I'm just like make a little sedan. I want a sedan that's even smaller than my Model 3, super efficient, but a massive battery, and it just goes really far. Like that would be great, but they're kind of focused on the existing platform and getting that out, which is like, yeah, you got to eat your vegetables, I guess.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, I had always kind of wondered, especially with Aptera's mantra of like pushing forward with that one vehicle, if
Right.
Most startups were starting to transition to that thought process because I do remember seeing Tesla's early company plan being like, oh, we're gonna have five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 vehicles, and we're like, okay, that sounds complicated. And of course,
Right.
now we know they have four models total, and well, five now with the Cybertruck. But yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah.
interesting to see how time has changed that mentality to uh, focus on the things that people want most out of the company. And so with Tello, it's the truck. With Aptera, it's the three-wheeler, and like with Tesla, it's uh, mid-size SUVs apparently. So yeah, it's interesting. I just was kind of curious about where your head was there.
Yeah, Eve Behar, our co-founder, always said like designing a car is kind of like designing 1,000 products at once
Hmm.
because there's so much that goes into a vehicle. It's not like accessories or just building a chair or building a phone or there's so many moving parts. There's electronics, there's battery, there's thermals, there's glass, there's paint. There's like so many different steps that, yeah, as simple as, a Telo truck or an Aptera may look, there's still a lot of time and money that goes into optimizing and finding a supply chain for each part. So that's why, to me, it's always kind of a red flag if you see a startup that's talking about doing five different models and they don't have any of them in production. It's like that's one vehicle is already a big ask in itself. So I'm thankful actually that Tello is very focused on that one truck because there's a ton of people that want that, and I think that is what we can offer that would fill the biggest hole in the market compared to anything else we could make. But yeah, it's easy to imagine and it's fun. So I like doing that.
Fair enough. All right. So there are like a lot of really small, scrappy electric vehicle startups that have kind of like gone under or, kind of hit by the wayside, got stuck in production hell or whatever have you. What, in your opinion, is like the it factor that's going to get Tello across the finish line? Like, what makes them a staple company in the future of like the auto industry and things like that?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is certainly having a great differentiating feature,
Hmm.
which is, I think, a big mistake a lot of the other EV startups made was just kind of adding to the noise, not really adding too much. It's not enough to just be like, okay, here's our design. It looks a little different. It's like, okay, but where's the function? Because design is all subjective. So some people might like your design more than the established designs, but it's a lot harder to argue with functionality. Like no one else is making a truck that fits in this form factor. And especially as we're transitioning more to all electric, these efficiency gains pay off both in manufacturing and supply chains and capability, getting efficiency, getting range, getting performance out of a small footprint really, really pays off in this industry. So I think the big it factor that is probably pretty wise of Tello is to say we're not going to build our own factory from the ground up. We're going to work with existing manufacturers. So we've had negotiations with them and we've had kind of fights. They've had fights over who gets to build it, which is
Hmm.
kind of in a good position to be in. But
Right.
yeah, trying to build your own factory from scratch is going to take way too long and be way too expensive. So I can't announce anything today, but like essentially the factory where our truck will be made is already done. Like there's a building, it's enclosed. There will be, of course, steps to the tooling and all the different parts that get made, but that's another big emphasis we've made from the beginning is to start slow. Because we've seen a lot of companies that I think tried to go big too fast
Hmm.
and they spent a ton of money on hard tooling which is much more expensive, but it's rated to build, hundreds of thousands of parts, hundreds of thousands of vehicles. Whereas we from the beginning have been focused on let's start a little smaller and focus on soft tooling, which can be a fraction of the price, but just doesn't build as many units.
Sure.
So that's been kind of Jason's pitch since the day I met him, and we haven't really drifted from that initial plan from the beginning, which is we're not going for high volume day one, which is what costs so much and results in so much overhead. And often why you see these other EV startups losing money on their first vehicles is because they spent all this hard tooling money that we're not going to do because we're actually communicating with both existing and former employees and people who worked at these EV startups what
Hmm.
went wrong. We're asking them like, okay, how do we avoid making the same mistakes that happened at that company? You guys know the names. I don't have to name them. But yeah, all those earlier companies that didn't make it, we're asking them directly how to avoid making those same mistakes and how to improve, or what went right and what went wrong, and how do we basically learn from the best choices and the worst choices. So there's a lot to be learned because there has been a graveyard of EV startups over the past decade or so, and starting small and not trying to pursue massive volume right from the beginning, I think makes us a lot more capital efficient. It means that we don't have to spend nearly as much as what the other guys have, which makes us more attractive to investors. Yeah, not having to build a whole factory from scratch, I think really just saves a lot of time and money.
Absolutely. Okay. So this kind of brought up a story like when I saw the Telo truck, when I like very first impression of it, of course, oh, that's a little weird looking little guy there. Let me see what's going on. But
Sure,
when I first looked at it, it reminded me a little bit of an El Camino in concept, in that it's
sure.
just a car truck that's like supposed to be smaller and just as practical and things like that. Um, when I asked the it factor question, I was like, I wonder how the business would look at what makes them unique and amazing. And like as a consumer, just kind of from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, that's like an El Camino to me. That was the line that was formed in my head. It's like, oh, I would love to have one of those because my uncle had one and he let me drive it. That was like the third car I ever drove in my life. So it's
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
I want to relive that thing. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, great comparison. I love the El Camino. That's
Yeah,
great.
man.
Just shame it
Um,
ran on fuel.
yeah,
That's my
man.
one issue.
There's a company that I knew of that was like transitioning between like gas powered cars, making them electric and things like that. And I was wondering if they had ever done an El Camino, but I never got around to asking the question. But anyway, yeah. That was all the questions that I had for today. Was there anything that we didn't talk about or that you're just like dying to divulge to the general public about Telo's awesomeness? Like what's going on there?
It's exciting to be a part of. Like I know what it's like to be a fan because I've been a fan of other EV brands for so long, but it's a whole different level of excitement and pressure at the same time to be like in the meetings where a lot of this stuff gets talked about. So it's cool to be a part of something that you're so passionate about, and I wanted to share that that's actually one of the requirements. Well, I don't know about requirements, but like important details they look for when hiring at Tello
Hmm,
is, does this person see the Tello truck as their next vehicle?
hmm,
And that's an important level of passion and excitement they're looking for because everybody there wants that product to succeed because they want it to exist. And they're all planning for, like, this is what I'm going to drive next.
right.
This is my next car that I'm working on. Um, so that puts in an extra level of care, attention to detail, and yeah, it's really grown on me over time. I was excited from day one and I really wanted it to exist, but now like once you have a chance to taste it, once you get a chance to drive in it and ride in it, you're like, "Oh man, it just becomes that much harder to leave behind." When you're like, "Okay, I gotta go. I don't get to take it home." So everyone at the company's fighting over it though. Everyone wants to take it. Take it home or take it for a spin. It's like we need more of them quick.
All right. Fair enough, man. Well, I appreciate your time today. This was one of my more fun interviews, I gotta admit, just for the sake of the fact that your answers were complete. Like, this is a little bit of behind the scenes here, but when I wrote these questions out, I sent a little message at the top that said, yeah, I might ask extra questions or I might add a little something here or this. None of that was necessary. So this is my editing
Because I talk
easier.
too much.
No, so I like more talking than less because, like I said, it makes my
Okay,
job easier later on. But no, it's
sure.
especially when the person is articulate and has something to say, I can listen to you forever. So yeah, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your
Oh,
time.
thank you very much.
Yeah, anything else that you wanted to drop about Tello, just like throw it in the comments or something. Like I'll tag you guys in the post. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. This has been both Drew and the Ninjaneer talking of the wonderful awesomeness that is Tello. Thank you guys for watching and have a great rest of your day. Let's see here. Hello, greetings, and welcome everyone to this unique interview with one Telo Trucks representative known at, well, do you want me to use your name or do you want me to like?
You could just say Drew. That's fine. That
Okay, I was like,
works.
I don't know if you had a aversion to that because people were getting on me earlier for like using my full name in the interview. They're like, "Oh, people are gonna find you." I'm like, how many Jeff Livingstons there were in the world, you would not be concerned. But
You're
yeah,
probably safe. You're probably good.
right. Okay, sorry.